The silverware clinked against expensive china as my family celebrated my brother Marcus's genius breakthrough at our parents' house. I sat quietly, picking at my mother's famous pot roast while Marcus dominated the conversation as usual. This AI-driven personal assistant will revolutionize everything, Marcus declared, gesturing with his wine glass. It's like nothing else on the market. The neural processing capabilities alone, we're so proud of you, honey, Mom beamed, reaching over to squeeze his hand. Using James's college fund was the right decision. He wasn't even going to a real university anyway. I gripped my fork tighter but maintained my calm expression. 3 years at MIT apparently didn't qualify as a real university to my family, not compared to Marcus's business degree from Stanford. Just programming games and wasting time, Dad added with a dismissive wave. At least this way the money is being put to good use. A real business venture. Marcus smirked at me across the table. Don't worry, little brother, once we launch tomorrow and the venture capital starts rolling in, maybe I'll hire you as a junior coder, entry level of course. I took a slow sip of water, thinking about the sealed envelope in my jacket pocket, the one containing USPTO patent No. 11,234,567, granted to James Anderson for neural network-based adaptive learning assistant with natural language processing integration. The patent I'd filed 2 years ago while working on my waste-of-time gaming projects. Tell us more about this revolutionary AI, Marcus, I said carefully. How exactly does the neural processing work? My brother's eyes lit up. He loved nothing more than an audience, especially one he thought was beneath him. It's brilliant, really. The system uses adaptive learning algorithms to understand user behavior patterns. Natural language processing allows seamless interaction. And the neural network architecture. I pressed. How did you structure the deep learning implementation? Marcus faltered slightly. Well, that's proprietary information. Can't give away all our secrets. He forced a laugh. Of course not, I nodded. Although I'm curious how you managed to develop such complex AI architecture in just 6 months. Especially since you've never taken a machine learning course. The room grew quiet. My father frowned. What are you implying, James? Nothing at all, I said mildly. Just interested in the technical details. After all, $127,000 is a lot of money to invest in development. Your college fund was put to better use. Marcus snapped. And I don't have to justify my work to someone who spends all day playing video games in his apartment. If he only knew what that video game programming really entailed. The countless hours spent developing and refining the neural network architecture. The meticulous documentation. The patent application process. You're right, I conceded. You don't have to justify anything to me. But you might need to justify it to these people. I pulled out my phone and opened my email, sliding it across the table. The message from Wilson and Park Law Firm was brief but clear. Mr. Anderson, as requested, we've completed our review of TechGenius Inc. Forthcoming. We can proceed with cease and desist letters and injunctive relief at your direction. Regards, Sarah Wilson. Partner Marcus's face went pale as he read. This is a joke, right? Some kind of pathetic attempt to sabotage my launch? Your launch? I raised an eyebrow. That's an interesting perspective, considering you copied my neural network architecture line by line. The one I developed and patented 2 years ago. What patent? Dad demanded. James, what are you talking about? Wordlessly, I removed the envelope from my jacket and placed it on the table. My father snatched it up, hands shaking slightly as he read through the patent documentation. This is impossible, he muttered. You're just a don you couldn't have. Just a what, Dad? A programmer? A gamer? While you were all dismissing my work, I was building something real, something valuable enough that Marcus decided to steal it. I didn't steal anything, Marcus shouted, standing up so quickly his chair fell backward. This is ridiculous. You must have forged these documents. The USPTO database is public record, I cut in. Feel free to verify it yourself. Along with the timestamps on all my development documentation and source code repositories. Would you like me to pull those up as well? Mom started crying. Marcus, what did you do? Nothing. He's lying.
Oh, this is just jealousy, because I'm actually successful while he wastes his life on computers.
Those computers just caught you in corporate theft. I interrupted. Would you like to know what else they caught? I pulled up another email on my phone. Mr. Anderson, Our forensic analysis confirms unauthorized access to your private GitHub repositories from IP addresses matching TechGenius Inc.ES network. Access logs and file transfers indicate systematic copying of proprietary code between March and August of this year. Additionally, we've documented multiple attempts to modify metadata and timestamps, suggesting deliberate concealment of these activities. Please advise how you wish to proceed with this evidence. Best regards, Michael Chang, Digital Forensics Specialist. The color drained from Marcus's face. You set me up. No, brother. You did this to yourself. Did you really think I wouldn't notice when you used my old login credentials to access my private repositories? The ones you borrowed from my laptop when you visited last Christmas. I don't understand, Mom whispered. Marcus, you said you developed this AI yourself. He lied, I said simply. He took my college fund, stole my intellectual property, and planned to pass it off as his own work. Tomorrow's launch would have put him in violation of my patent and opened him up to major liability. You can't do this to me. Marcus's voice cracked. The investors, we have commitments. Millions in funding lined up. Based on fraudulent claims, I noted. I wonder how those investors will feel when they learn the core technology belongs to someone else. Someone who has no intention of licensing it to you. Dad finally found his voice. Now hold on, James. Surely we can work something out. This is family. Family? I laughed harshly. Was it family when you let him steal my college fund? When you dismissed years of my work as worthless? When you supported his theft of my intellectual property? But your future, Mom pleaded. If you do this, you'll destroy your brother's career. My future? I stood up slowly. Let me tell you about my future. While Marcus was stealing my work, I was negotiating with legitimate tech companies. Tomorrow morning, I'm signing a licensing deal with Global Tech for $40 million, plus ongoing royalties. Dead silence fell over the dining room. Even Marcus stopped his panicked pacing. 40 million? Dad stammered, plus equity in their AI division, I added. They're announcing me as their new chief technology officer next week. Corner office, full team, and complete creative control over the neural network's implementation. But that's impossible. Marcus whispered. You're just a what? I asked quietly. A programmer? A gamer? A younger brother who was never quite good enough. While you were busy looking down on me, I built something revolutionary, something valuable enough that you decided to steal it, and now you get to face the consequences. I stood up, straightening my jacket. The cease and desist letters will arrive first thing tomorrow. Any attempt to launch the product will result in immediate legal action. My lawyers will be in touch about damages for the theft of intellectual property. James, please. Mom begged. He's your brother. Yes, he is. And he stole from me. Twice. The money I might have forgiven. But the code, my work? That's unforgivable. I'll be ruined. Marcus choked out. The investors will sue my reputation. You did this to yourself, I repeated. Actions have consequences, even for the golden child. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Marcus, about that junior coder position you offered. I think I'll pass. But if you're looking for work next month, I might have an opening in QA. Entry level, of course. The door closed behind me on absolute silence. In my car, I finally let out a shaky breath. Years of dismissal, mockery, and theft had led to this moment. Part of me felt guilty about Marcus's inevitable downfall, but a larger part remembered every snide comment, every dismissive gesture, every time they treated my passion and talent as worthless. My phone buzzed, Global Tech's lawyers confirming tomorrow's signing. I smiled as I started the engine. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success, it's making them realize exactly what they underestimated. The following week unfolded exactly as I'd predicted. Though the intensity of the fallout exceeded even my expectations, I sat in my new corner office at Global Tech, watching the tech news headlines scroll across my dual monitors. TechGenius CEO Marcus Anderson faces investor lawsuit after patent fraud revelation, startup scandal, the brothers behind Silicon Valley's latest controversy. Global Tech announces revolutionary AI partnership with James Anderson. My assistant Sarah knocked on the glass door. Your father's here again, Mr. Anderson. Third time this week. Let me guess, no appointment. None. He's becoming insistent. I sighed, closing the financial reports I'd been reviewing. Send him in, and Sarah, hold my calls for the next 30 minutes. Dad looked older than he had at dinner last week. His normally immaculate suit was slightly wrinkled, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, taking in the expansive office with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Nice view, he managed finally. Global tech believes in rewarding innovation, I replied coolly. Please sit. He sank into one of the leather chairs facing my desk. James, we need to talk about your brother. Unless he's prepared to admit his theft and make restitution, there's nothing to discuss. He's your brother. Dad exploded, then quickly lowered his voice. This vendetta, it's destroying him. The investors are suing for fraud. His reputation is ruined. He can't even get a job interview. Actions have consequences, I said, repeating my words from dinner. He stole my work, tried to pass it off as his own, and nearly cost me a $40 million deal. What did you expect would happen? We're family. Family, I cut him off. Was it family, when you let him steal my college fund? When you dismissed my career as playing games? When you supported his theft because he was the successful son? Dad slumped in his chair. We were wrong. I was wrong. Is that what you want to hear? What I want is irrelevant. This isn't about want, it's about consequences. Marcus made his choices. Now he faces the results. He's living in our basement, Dad said quietly. His fiancée left him. Everything he worked for. Everything he stole, I corrected. Let's be very clear. Marcus didn't work for anything. He stole my code, my designs, my innovation. He's not a victim here. And you're not a vindictive god. Dad shot back. You have the power to end this, to show mercy. I leaned back in my chair, studying the man who had always favored my brother. Interesting choice of words. When Marcus stole my college fund, did you tell him to show mercy? When he accessed my private files without permission, did you demand he consider family first? Dad's silence was answer enough. I learned something valuable from you and Marcus, I continued. Success isn't just about innovation or hard work. It's about protecting what's yours, about standing up for yourself when others try to take advantage. We never meant to dismiss me, to treat me as lesser, to support theft because it came from your favorite son. I shook my head. Intentions don't matter, actions do. And your actions made it very clear where I stood in this family. My phone buzzed, a reminder for my next meeting. I have a board presentation in 10 minutes. Was there anything else? Dad stood slowly, looking suddenly ancient. Your mother misses you. Sunday dinners aren't the same. I'm sure Marcus provides plenty of entertainment from the basement. He flinched at the sarcasm. When did you become so cold? Around the same time my family became so calculating. I stood as well. I'll have Sarah show you out. As he reached the door, Dad turned back. He's talking about bankruptcy, personal and corporate. Everything will be gone. Not everything, I corrected. He'll still have family. Isn't that what matters most? After he left, I stood at the windows, watching the city buzz below. My phone buzzed again. A text from Marcus this time. Please, I'll do anything. Just call off the lawyers. I thought about responding, but what was there to say? He'd made his choices, betrayed my trust, stolen my work. The consequences were his to bear. Another knock at my door. This time it was Michael Chang, my head of development. The integration team is ready for you, he said. And the early testing results are incredible. Your neural network architecture is revolutionary. I smiled slightly. Funny how that works when you actually understand the technology instead of just stealing it. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings, code reviews, and strategic planning. Global Tech was betting big on my AI architecture, and I was determined to prove they'd made the right choice. At 7, I finally headed home to my new penthouse apartment. The doorman nodded respectfully as I entered the lobby. Evening, Mr. Anderson. There's a young lady waiting upstairs. Says she's your sister-in-law. Or former sister-in-law. Amanda, Marcus's ex-fiancée. This should be interesting. I found her sitting in my living room, still wearing her designer clothes but looking somehow diminished. She stood when I entered. James, thank you for seeing me. I wasn't aware I had a choice, given that you're already in my apartment. She flushed. I'm sorry. I needed to understand. Understand what? How Marcus stole my work, how he planned to take credit for years of my research, or how it all fell apart when he got caught. He said you set him up, she said quietly, that you left those repositories accessible deliberately. I laughed harshly. Of course he did. Marcus never could accept responsibility for his actions. Tell me, when did you figure out what he'd done? She looked away. I saw some of the original code files on his laptop. The timestamps, the comments, they didn't match his story. But I didn't want to believe that your perfect fiancé was a fraud. That the man I loved could do something so calculating. To his own brother, I poured myself a drink, not offering her one. People show you who they are if you pay attention. Marcus showed me years ago that he valued success over ethics. I just made sure I was prepared when he proved it again. And now, she asked, how far will you take this? As far as necessary. The investors deserve to know their money was based on fraud. The industry deserves to know the truth about Marcus's innovation. And I deserve recognition for my work. Amanda stood, smoothing her skirt. You know, I always thought Marcus was the ruthless one. Turns out I was wrong. Protecting what's yours isn't ruthless, I corrected. It's necessary. Keep telling yourself that, she said softly. Maybe eventually you'll believe it's just about business. After she left, I stood at my floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights flicker on. My phone buzzed with another text from Marcus. This one longer. I know I messed up. I know I can't fix it. But please, don't destroy everything. Mom and Dad don't deserve this pain. I'll sign whatever you want. Just make it stop. I thought about responding. About explaining that this wasn't about revenge or destruction. It was about justice. About consequences. About finally standing up for myself. Instead, I turned off my phone and went back to reviewing code. Tomorrow would bring more meetings, more developments, more opportunities to prove that the brother they'd dismissed had become the success they'd never imagined. And if that success came at the cost of Marcus's carefully constructed facade, well, that was just another consequence of his choices. The city lights twinkled below, and somewhere in my parents' basement, my brother was learning the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the price of betrayal is everything you thought you deserved. 3 months after the launch of Global Tech's AI platform, success had exceeded even my expectations. But success, I was learning, came with its own complications. I stood at the podium at the National Technology Innovation Conference, wrapping up my keynote speech about neural network architecture and the future of AI, and that concludes my presentation. Any questions? A familiar voice cut through the crowd. Yeah, I have one. How does it feel to destroy your family for corporate success? The audience murmured as Marcus stood up in the back row. He looked terrible, unshaven, wearing a wrinkled shirt that had seen better days. Security started moving toward him, but I held up my hand. An interesting question, I replied calmly, though perhaps not as interesting as how it feels to steal your brother's work and pass it off as your own. Would you like to share that perspective with the audience? Marcus's face reddened. You smug bastard. You think you've won. You think this makes you better? Sir, this is a technical conference, the moderator interrupted. If you don't have a relevant question. Oh, I have relevant questions. Marcus spat, like how my brother orchestrated this whole thing. How he set me up to fail. How security reached him then, firmly escorting him toward the exit. His voice echoed back through the hall. You'll regret this, James. Family is forever. The moderator quickly called on another attendee, shifting focus to questions about implementation strategies and scaling solutions. But I could feel the audience's curiosity, their hunger for drama beneath the technical discourse. Later in the green room, my team was discussing damage control. We should release a statement, Sarah suggested. Get ahead of any narrative he might try to spin. Michael Chang shook his head. Better to ignore it. Engaging just gives him credibility. He's right, I said, loosening my tie. Marcus discredited himself months ago. Let him shout into the void. My phone buzzed, Mom's number. I'd been ignoring her calls for weeks, but something made me answer this time. James, please don't hang up. I'm between meetings, Mom. What do you need? Your father, he's in the hospital. Heart attack. The doctors say stress. My grip tightened on the phone. Is he stable? Yes, but he's asking for you. Please, James. Just come see him. I closed my eyes considering. Text me the hospital details. I'll try to stop by tonight. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of meetings and code reviews. At 7, I found myself standing outside Dad's hospital room, watching through the window as Mom held his hand. He looked small in the hospital bed, surrounded by beeping machines. Mom saw me first, her eyes lighting up with hope as I entered. James, you came. I had a gap in my schedule, I said, trying to maintain distance. But it was harder seeing them like this. Dad pale and weak, Mom's hands trembling as she smoothed his blanket. Son. Dad's voice was rough. Good to see you. How are you feeling? Like I had a heart attack. He attempted a smile. Turns out family drama isn't great for cardiac health. Dad, no, let me finish. He shifted in the bed. I've been thinking a lot about choices, about consequences, about what really matters. If this is another plea for Marcus, it's not. It's an apology. That stopped me. In 30 years I'd never heard my father apologize. We failed you, he continued. Long before Marcus stole your work, we failed to see your potential, to support your dreams. We let our prejudices about real work blind us to your brilliance. Mom wiped tears from her eyes. We were so wrong, James. So terribly wrong. Why now? I demanded. Because I'm successful. Because the money and recognition proved I wasn't wasting my time. Because nearly dying has a way of clarifying things. Dad said quietly. Success, failure, they're not what matter in the end. Family is. Family. I laughed bitterly. Like when Marcus stole my college fund, when he took my work, when you all supported him. We were wrong, Dad repeated. All of us. But this vendetta, it's poisoning you, son. I can see it. I started to protest, but he held up a hand. You've won. Marcus is destroyed. The industry knows your brilliance. But at what cost to your soul? My soul is fine, I said stiffly. Actions have consequences. Marcus chose his path. And you chose yours, Mom said softly. But paths can change. Forgiveness is possible. Forgiveness requires remorse, I pointed out. Marcus still claims I set him up. Still won't admit what he did. A noise from the doorway made us all turn. Marcus stood there looking even worse than he had at the conference. Actually, he said quietly, I'd like to admit it now. The monitors beeped in the silence as Marcus entered the room. He couldn't meet my eyes. I stole your work, he said. Not just the code. I stole your college fund, your trust, your chance at education. I did it because I was jealous. Because you were always smarter than me. Always more innovative. I couldn't stand the idea that my little brother might outshine me. Marcus' mom started, but he shook his head. Let me finish. I've lost everything. My company, my fiancé, my reputation. But the worst loss, knowing I destroyed my relationship with my brother. Not because you exposed me, James, but because I betrayed you in the first place. I studied him, looking for signs of manipulation. Why now? Because Dad almost died. His voice cracked. Because I'm tired of lying. Because maybe if I finally tell the truth, I can start rebuilding something. Not my career or reputation. Just family. The machines beeped steadily. Mom squeezed Dad's hand, and I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps its distant cousin. The investors, I said finally. How much do you owe? Marcus blinked. What? The lawsuit. The damages. How much? About 3 million. But I can't. I'll pay it. Everyone stared at me. On conditions. I continued. You sign a full confession, admitting to the theft of intellectual property. You agree to never work in AI development again. And you get therapy to deal with whatever drove you to do this. James. Dad's voice was hoarse. You don't have to. Yes, I do. I turned to Marcus. Not for you. For them. All. For family. But this is your only chance. Lie to me again. Try to manipulate this situation. And I'll make sure you never work in tech again. Understand? Marcus nodded, tears streaming down his face. Thank you. I don't deserve. No, you don't. But they deserve peace. And maybe we all deserve a chance to be better. Mom was crying openly now. Dad's monitors showed an elevated heart rate, and I felt not happy exactly, but lighter. Like setting down a heavy weight I'd carried for months. I have meetings tomorrow, I said, heading for the door. But I'll have my lawyers draw up the paperwork. And Marcus? Yeah? Get a haircut and shave. You look terrible. A ghost of his old smile appeared. Still giving orders, little brother. Someone has to. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, letting out a long breath. My phone buzzed. Michael Chang with updates on our latest testing results. The future was still rushing forward, full of possibilities and innovations. But maybe, just maybe, it could include some healing too. I thought about Amanda's words from months ago. Keep telling yourself it's just about business. She was right. It was never just about business. It was about family, betrayal, redemption, about choices, and consequences, and the long road back from destruction. I opened my phone's calendar and created a new recurring event. Sunday dinner, 6 p.m. Sometimes success isn't just about winning. Sometimes it's about knowing when to extend a hand to those who've fallen, even if they pushed themselves off the cliff in the first place. 1 year later, I stood in my parents' backyard, watching Marcus teach his new programming students under the old oak tree. Not AI development. We'd been clear about that boundary, but basic coding for high school students who couldn't afford regular classes. Your brother's good with them, Amanda said, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of lemonade. Yes, Amanda. Life has a way of writing unexpected plot twists. He always was a good teacher, I admitted, accepting the drink. When he's not trying to steal the lesson plan. She smiled, her engagement ring catching the sunlight. Not Marcus's ring. That relationship had ended with his downfall. This one was newer, simpler, and happened to match the one on my left hand. Still bitter, she asked softly. Realistic, I corrected. Trust takes time. Across the yard, Marcus looked up and waved. He'd changed over the past year. Humbler, more genuine. The therapy sessions had helped him understand his destructive competitive streak. The community service teaching programming had given him a new purpose. Mom appeared on the back porch. Dinner's ready. James, can you help your father with the grill? Dad's recovery had been slow but steady. The heart attack had forced him to retire, but he'd found joy in smaller things. Gardening, woodworking, rebuilding relationships with both his sons. I headed to the grill, where Dad was finishing up the burgers. Need a hand. Always. He passed me the spatula. How's the new project going? Global Tech's expansion. On schedule. We're launching in Asia next month. And Marcus's students. I glanced at my brother, now helping a teenage girl debug her code. 2 got early acceptance to MIT. Full scholarships. Dad nodded approvingly. He's finding his way. Different path than he expected, but maybe a better one. Maybe, I agreed. Though I kept the company's security protocols strict and Marcus's access limited to basic systems. Trust might be rebuilding, but I wasn't naive. The family gathered around the patio table. Mom, Dad, Marcus, Amanda, me and a few of Marcus's students, who often joined our Sunday dinners. The conversation flowed easily now, without the old undercurrents of competition and resentment. Hey James, Marcus called from across the table. One of my students had an interesting question about neural network basics. Mind if I bring her by your office this week? A year ago, that request would have set off alarm bells. Now I just nodded. Have Sarah schedule it. But remember, no AI development. I know. He smiled ruefully. Just basic concepts for a bright kid. After dinner, I found Marcus in Dad's study, looking at old family photos. Remember this one? He held up a picture of us as kids, building a computer together. You were always the brains of the operation. You weren't bad yourself, I said, sitting down, when you weren't trying to prove something. He set the photo down carefully. I've been offered a job, teaching computer science at the local community college. Yeah, how do you feel about that? Scared, he admitted. It's not the corporate success I planned, not the legacy I wanted. Maybe it's the legacy you needed. He looked at me sharply. When did you get so philosophical? Around the same time you got humble. We shared a laugh. something that would have seemed impossible a year ago. I need a reference, he said quietly, not for the technical skills, they've verified those, but for character, growth. I studied my brother, the man who had stolen my work, betrayed my trust, and nearly destroyed himself in the process, but also the man who had faced his demons, made amends, and found a new way to contribute. I'll write it, I said finally. But Marcus, make it count. I will. He hesitated. Thank you, not just for this, for everything. The investor settlement, the second chance, family, I shrugged. Complicated, messy but still family. Later that night, Amanda and I walked through our neighborhood, enjoying the cool evening air. Your brother's really changed, she observed. We all have. She squeezed my hand, having regrets about how it all played out. I thought about the past year, the confrontation, the collapse, the slow rebuilding of trust. No regrets, just perspective. And the new AI project, still keeping him at arm's length. Trust but verify. I smiled. He's earned a second chance, not blind faith. We reached our front porch, where wedding planning materials were spread across the table. Another surprise twist, finding love in the aftermath of betrayal. You know, Amanda said, when I left Marcus, I thought I was leaving the whole family behind. Funny how life works out. Funny how truth sets things right, I corrected. Even when it hurts at first. Inside, I checked my email one last time. A message from Marcus. Thank you for the reference. Promise I won't let you down. Not again. P.S. One of my students solved that coding challenge you sent. 17 years old, and already breaking records. Reminded me of another teenage coding prodigy I used to know. I smiled and closed the laptop. Success, I'd learned, came in many forms. Sometimes it was a multi-million-dollar tech launch. Sometimes it was watching your brother find his true calling. Sometimes it was simply learning to trust again, one small step at a time. The next morning, I stood in my global tech office, looking out at the city. On my desk, Dad's heart medication reminder app. The first project Marcus and I had collaborated on since the fallout. Simple, clean code, no hidden agendas, no stolen work. Just two brothers, using their skills to help their father. Sarah knocked on my door. Your brother's student is here for the neural network discussion. Send them in. I turned from the window, ready to share knowledge without fear of theft, ready to be the brother, and the man I'd always wanted to be. Because sometimes the biggest success isn't in winning the battle, but in finding peace after the war, in building something new from the ashes of what was lost, in remembering that family, despite everything, remains family. And sometimes, just sometimes, the hardest victories are the ones that don't feel like victories at all. They feel like healing.